Hey, what is up, everybody? I'm here to give you guys my Read Aloud series for The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Chapter 31, and let's just get right into it. If you want to check out, I plan on finishing this book today too, by the way. I only have 5 more chapters to read. I've been kind of putting this chapter off a little bit because this chapter is 10 pages long, and I wanted to read it on a day where because yesterday I got up kind of late and I was recording videos all day, so I kind of burned myself out for making videos yesterday. So yesterday wasn't the day to do it, and I didn't want to do it on Saturday because I had read a lot of other chapters, and this chapter's like this chapter's 10 pages long. It's a pretty long chapter, which is a good thing because I expect a lot of stuff to get accomplished in this chapter, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. Yeah, so let me just get right into it. Before I start actually talking about reading this chapter and stuff, please make sure, if you guys haven't already, that if this is your first time watching this video, please make sure you click down on the playlist down in the description box below to check out my Read Aloud series for chapters 1 through 30. And now that I've done that cheap little plug there, let's get right into the chapter. So this chapter, it's called Lost in the Cave, and this chapter starts on page 202 and ends on page 212. So let's get right into it. Now to return to Tom and Becky's share in the picnic. They tripped along the murky aisles with the rest of the company. So this is, I guess it's kind of going back to kind of let us know what happened, how they got trapped in this cave. One thing I kind of regret about this, when I was reading about the picnic before, is I didn't really pay attention because I was kind of more interested about what was going to be going on with Huckleberry Finn and the whole situation with Injun and Joe. So I didn't really understand what happened because I didn't really care. So that's one thing I do regret about reading that chapter. So I may have to go back and reread it again. But this is going to be like a prelude to what happened, how they got trapped in this cave. Now to return to Tom and Becky's share in the picnic. They tripped along the murky aisles with the rest of the company, visiting the familiar wonders of the cave, wonders dubbed with rather over-descriptive names such as the drawing room, the cathedral, Aladdin's place, and so on. Presently, the hide-and-seek frolicking began, and Tom and Becky, engaged in it with zeal under exertion, began to grow a trifle wearisome. Then they wandered down a sinuous avenue, holding their candles aloft and reading the tangled webwork of names, dates, post office addresses, and montios with which the rocky walls had been frescoed in candle smoke. Still driffling along and talking, they scarcely noticed that they were now in a part of the cave whose walls were not frescoed. They smoked their own names under an overhanging shelf and moved on. So that's probably the name that was read in the last chapter that said Becky and Tom when the people were looking for them. Presently they came to a place where a little stream of water trickling over a ledge and carrying a limestone sediment with it, had in the slow dragging ages formed a laced and ruffled Niagara, I think that's how you say that, and gleaming and imperishable stone. Tom squeezed his small body behind it in order to illuminate it for Becky's gratification. He found that it curtained a sort of steep natural stairway which was enclosed between narrow walls, and at once the ambition to be a discoverer seized him. Becky responded to his call, and they made a smoke mark for future guidance and started upon their quest. They found this way and that fall down into the secret depths of the cave. Mark another cave, made another mark, and branched off in search of novelties to tell the upper world about. In one place, they found a spacious cavern from whose ceiling depended a multitude of shining statues of the length and circumference of a man's leg. They walked out all about it, wondering and admiring, and presently left it by one of the numerous passages that opened into it. This shortly brought them to a bewitching spring whose basin was encrusted with a frostwork of glittering crystals. It was in the midst of a cavern whose walls were supported by many fascinating pillars which had been formed by the joining of great stalactites and stalagmites together, the result of this ceaseless water drip of centuries. Under the roof, vast knots of bats had packed themselves together, thousands in a bunch. The lights disturbed the creatures, and they came flocking down by hundreds, squeaking and darted furiously at the candles. Tom knew their ways and the danger of this sort of conduct. He seized Becky's hand and hurried her into the first corridor that offered, and none too soon, for a bat struck Becky's light out with its swing while she was passing out of the cavern. So this obviously, we know so this probably has how they kind of got stuck, because Becky lost her lantern. But let's continue reading. The bats chased the children a good distance, but the fugitives plunged into every new passage that offered, and at last got rid of the purulous things. Tom found a subterranean lake shortly, which stretched its dim length away until its shape was lost in the shadows. He wanted to explore its borders, but concluded that it would be best to sit down and rest a while first. Now, for the first time, the deep stillness of the place laid a clammy hand upon the spirits of the children. Becky said, "Why, I didn't notice, but it seems so long since I heard any of the others. Come to think, Becky, we are away down below them, and I don't know how far away north or south or east or whichever it is. We couldn't hear them here." Becky grew apprehensive. "I wonder how long we've been down here, Tom. We better start back." "Yes, I reckon we better." "Perhaps we better. Can't you find the way, Tom? It's all mixed up crogness to me." "I reckon I could find it, but then the bats, if they put both candles out, it will be an awful fix. Let's try some other way so as to not go through there." "Well, but I hope we don't get lost. I hope..." Oh, there's like a little stain there. "It would be so awful," and the girl shuddered at the thought of the dreadful possibilities. They started through a corridor and traversed it in silence a long way, glancing at each new opening to see if there was anything familiar about the look of it, but they were all strange. Every time Tom made an examination, Becky would watch his face for an encouraging sign, and he would say cheerfully, "Oh, it's all right. This ain't the one, but we'll come to it right away." I think this is a picture of Tom and Becky walking through trying to find their way out, like it was described. But he felt less and less hopeful with each failure, and presently began to turn off into divergent avenues at sheer random and desperate hope of finding the one that was wanted. He still said it was all right, but there was such a leaden dread at his heart that the words had lost their ring and surrounded just as if he said, "All is lost." Becky clung to his side in an anguish of fear and tried hard to keep back the tears, but they would come. At last she said, "Oh, Tom, never mind the bath. Let's go back that way. We seem to get worse and worse off all the time." Tom stopped. "Listen," said he. Profound silence, silence so deep that even their breathings were conspicuous in the hush. Tom shouted. The call went echoing down the empty aisles and died out in the distance in a faint sound that resembled a rippling of mocking laughter. "Oh, don't do it again, Tom. It's too horrid," said Becky. "It is horrid, but I better. Becky, they might hear us, you know," and he shouted again. The might was even a chillier horror than the ghostly laughter. It so confessed a perishing hope. The children stood still and listened, but there was no result. Tom turned upon the back track at once and hurried his steps. It was but a little while before a certain indecision in his manner revealed another fearful fact to Becky. He could not find his way back. "Oh, Tom, you didn't make any marks?" "Becky, I was such a fool, such a fool. I never thought we might want to come back. No, I can't find the way. It's all mixed up. Tom, we're lost. We're lost. When we never can get out of this awful place. Oh, why did we ever leave the others?" She sank to the ground and burst into such a frenzy of crying that Tom was appalled with the idea that she might die or lose her reason. He sat down by her and put his arms around her. She buried her face in his bosom. She clung to him. She poured out her terrors, her unveiling regrets, and the far echoes turned them all to jeering laughter. Tom begged her to pluck up hope again, and she said she could not. She fell to blaming and accusing himself for getting her into this miserable situation. This had a better effect. She said she would try to hope again. She would get up and follow whatever he might lead, if only he could not talk like that anymore. For he was no more to blame than she said. So they moved on again, aimlessly, simply at random. All they could do was to keep moving. For a while, Hope made a show of reviving. Not with any reason to back it, but only because it is its nature to revive when the spring has not been taken out of it by age and familiarity with failure. By and by, Tom took Becky's candle and blew it out. This economy meant so much. Words were not needed. Becky understood, and her hope died again. She knew that Tom had a whole candle and 3 or 4 pieces in his pocket, yet he must economize. I don't know. Pretty much, he's gonna save the candles so that way they don't run out. By and by, fatigue began to assert its claims. The children tried to pay no attention, for it's dreadful to think of sitting down when time was grown to be precious, moving in some direction in any was at least progress, and it might bear fruit. But to sit down was to invite death and shorten its pursuit. At last, Becky's frail limbs refused to carry her further. She sat down. Tom rested with her, and they talked of home, and the friends there, and the comfortable beds, and above all, the light. Becky cried, and Tom cried. Tom tried to think of some way of comforting her, but all his encouragements were grown threadbare with use, and sounded like sarcasms. Fatigue bore so heavily upon Becky that she drowsed off to sleep. Tom was grateful. He said, looking into her drawn face, and saw it grow smooth and natural under the influence of pleasant dreams. By and by, a smile dawned and rested there. The peaceful face reflected somewhat of peace and healing into his own spirit, and his thoughts wandered away to bygone times and dreamy memories. While he was deep in his musings, Becky woke up with a breezy little laugh, but it was stricken dead upon her lips, and a groan followed it. Oh, how could I sleep? I wish I never had waked. Now I don't, Tom. No, I don't, Tom. Don't look so. I won't say it again. I'm glad you've slept, Becky. You'll feel rested now, and we'll find the way out. We can try, Tom, but I've seen such a beautiful country in my dream. I reckon we are going there. Maybe not. Cheer up, Becky, and let's go on trying. They rose up, and obviously I think what Becky's talking about, that country, is probably heaven, which is yeah. They rose up and wandered along hand in hand. In hopelessness, they tried to estimate how long they had been in the cave, but all they knew was that it seemed days and weeks, and yet it was plain that this could not be, for their candles were not gone yet. A long time after this, they could not tell how long. Tom said they must go softly and listen for dripping water. They must find a spring. They found one presently, and Tom said it was time to rest again. Both were cruelly tired, yet Becky said she thought she could go on a little further. She was surprised to hear Tom dissent. She could not understand it. They sat down, and Tom fastened his candle to the wall in front of them with some clay. Thought was so soon busy. Nothing was said for some time. Then Becky broke the silence. Tom, I am so hungry. Tom took something out of his pocket. Do you remember this? Said he. Becky almost smiled. It's our wedding cake, Tom. Yes, I wish it was as big as a barrelful. It's all we've got. I saved it for the picnic for us to dream on, Tom, the way grown-up people do with wedding cake. But it will be our... She dropped the sentence where it was. Tom divided the cake, and Becky ate with good appetite, while Tom nibbled at his mati. There was abundance of cold to finish the feast with. By and by, Becky suggested that they move on again. Tom was silent a moment. Then he said, Becky, can you bear it if I tell you something? Becky's face paled, but she felt she could. Well then, Becky, we must stay here, where there's water to drink. That little piece is our last candle. Becky gave loose to tears and wailings. Tom did what he could to comfort her, but with little effect. At length, Becky said, Tom, well, Becky, they'll miss us and hunt for us. Yes, they will. Certainly they will. Becky, they're hunting for us now, Tom. Maybe they'll hunt for us now, Tom. Sorry, I read the Becky up above. Why, I reckon maybe they are. I hope they are. Would they miss us, Tom? When they get back to the boat, I reckon. Tom, it might be dark then. Would they know we hadn't come? I don't know, but anyway, your mother would miss you as soon as they got home. A frightened look in Becky's face brought Tom to his senses, and he saw that he made a blunder. Becky was not to have gone home that night. The children became silent and thoughtful. In a moment, in a new burst of grief, Becky showed Tom that the thing in his mind had struck hers also, that the Sabbath morning might be half spent before Mrs. Thatcher discovered that Becky was not at Mrs. Harper's. The children fastened their eyes upon the bit of candle and watched it melt slowly and pitilessly away. Saw the half-inch wick stand alone at last. Saw the feeble flame rise and fall, climb the thin column of smoke, linger at its top a moment, and then the horror of utter darkness reigned. How long afterward it was that Becky came to a slow consciousness that she was crying in Tom's arms, neither could tell. All they knew was that after what seemed a mighty stretch of time, both awoke of a dead stupor of sleep and resumed their miseries once more. Tom said it might be Sunday now, maybe Monday. He tried to get Becky to talk, but her sorrows were too oppressive. All her hopes were gone. Tom said that they must have been missed long ago, and no doubt the search was going on. He would shout it, maybe someone would come. He tried it, but in the darkness the distant echoes sounded so hideously that he tried it no more. The hours wasted away, and Tom's hunger came to torment the captives again. A portion of Tom's half of the cake was left. They divided it and ate it, but they seemed hungrier than before. The poor morsel of food only weeded desire. By and by, Tom said, "Shh, did you hear that?" Both held their breath and listened. There was a sound like the faintness far off shouted. Instantly Tom answered, and leading Becky by the hand, started groping down the corridor in its direction. Presently he listened again. Again the sound was heard, and apparently a little nearer. "It's them," said Tom. "They're coming along, Becky. We're all right now." The joyful of the prisoners was almost overwhelming. Their speed was slow, however, because pitfalls were somewhat common and had to be guarded against. They shortly came to one and had to stop. It might be 3 feet deep. It might be 100. There was no passing it. At any rate, Tom got down on his breast and reached as far as he could. No bottom. They must stay there and wait until the searchers came. They listened. Evidently the distance shouted were growing more distant. A moment or two, and they had gone altogether. The heart-sinking misery of it. Tom whooped until he was hoarse. But it was of no use. He talked hopefully to Becky, but an age of anxiousness awaited past, and no sounds came again. The children groped their way back to the spring. The weary time dragged on. They slept again and awoke famished and woe-stricken. Or woo-stricken, I don't know how to say it. I don't know how it's pronounced in this case. Tom believed it must be Tuesday by this time. Now an idea struck him. There were some side passages near at hand. It would be better to explore some of those than bear the weight of the heavy time and idleness. He took a kite line from his pocket, tied it to a projection, and he and Becky started. Tom in the lead, unwinding the line as he groped along. At the end of 20 steps, the corridor ended in a jumping off place. Tom got down on his knees and felt below, and then as far as around the corner, and as he could reach with his hands conveniently, he made an effort to stretch yet a little further to the right, and at that moment, not 20 yards away, a human hand holding a candle appeared from behind a rock. Tom lifted up a glorious shout, and instantly that hand was followed by the body. It belonged to Injun Joe's. Tom was paralyzed, as not by the body. No, paralyzed. He could not move. He was vastly gratified the next moment to see the Spaniard take to his heels and get himself out of sight. Tom wondered that Joe had not recognized his voice and come over and killed him for testifying in court, but the echoes must have disguised the voice. Without doubting that it was it, he reasoned. Tom's fright weakened very muscle in his body. He said to himself that if he had strength enough to get back to the spring, he would stay there, and nothing should tempt him to run the risk of meeting Injun Joe again. He said he was careful to keep from Becky what it was he had seen. He told her he had only shouted for luck. Becky, but hunger and wretchedness rise superior to fears in the long run. Another tedious wait at the spring and another long sleep brought changes. The children awoke, tortured with a raging hunger. Tom believed that it must be Wednesday or Thursday or even Friday or even Saturday. Now, and that the search had been given over. He proposed to explore another passage. He felt willing to risk Injun Joe and all other terrors, but Becky was very weak. She had sunk into a dreary apathy and would not be roused. She said she would wait now where she was and die. It would not be long. She told Tom to go with the kite line and explore if he chose, but she implored him to come back every little while and speak to her, and she made him promise that when the awful time came, he would stay by her and hold her hand until all was over. Tom kissed her with a choking sensation in his throat and made a show of being confident of finding the searchers or an escape from the cave. Then he took the kite line in his hands and went groping down one of the passages on his hands and knees, distressed with hunger and sick with bodings of coming doom. And that's the end of the chapter. Overall, that chapter was magnificent. I really enjoyed that chapter. Hearing Tom and Becky, their story about what was happening as all the stuff with Injun Joe, them getting trapped in the cave, and it was just really sad. And it really sucked that happened. And obviously it really sucked hearing Becky lose hope about whether or not they were going to make it. And Tom, Injun Joe beat in the cave, which I actually thought was going to happen. And yeah, it's pretty scary because I don't necessarily know if what Tom's going to do, because if he doesn't tell Injun Joe, he'll die, but he probably is afraid that Injun Joe will kill him. So it's, either way, it's a death situation. So yeah, it was really kind of sad to read that. Kind of Becky losing hope, and yeah, but it's actually, I think it's bringing them together in a sense. And because I think before they kind of weren't really seeing eye to eye, they were kind of starting to again, but this definitely helped it. And I really enjoyed this chapter. I thought it was very well written. I thought Mark Twain did a great job describing it. And overall, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Probably the best chapter, I would say, of this whole book was that chapter. I can't think. Maybe like the chapter where Injun Joe, when they went to the abandoned, when Tom and Huckleberry Finn went to the abandoned house. But I can't think of a better chapter than that one. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you guys for watching this video. I know it was a little longer than normal read alouds, but the chapter was longer. And yeah, thank you guys for watching, and make sure you guys like, comment, and share this video so that way people will watch it. Make sure you guys also subscribe to this channel for more content and click on the bell so that way every time I upload a video on this channel, you guys will get the notifications for it. And make sure you guys do the same for my CM Brothers channel. Make sure you guys subscribe to that channel. Make sure you guys click on the bell so that way every time you upload a video on that channel, you guys will get the notification for it. And that's pretty much it, guys. Talk to you later.